Welcome to my Youngkin versus Biden prediction. Let's start. And let's start for the state. Let's start this time with Texas. So, Glenn Youngkin is a really decent nominee for the state of Texas. Assuming that he does well enough, he should win the state of Texas by around anywhere from 7 to 9%, maybe 10 if he does even better than expected. But as of now, Texas likely. For the next state, for Florida, this is really interesting because most of the time I talk about Trump and DeSantis who are from the state of Florida, and it's their home state. And I think in this scenario, Glenn Youngkin would have their support and endorsement, and I think he just would barely win the state of Florida by a likely margin. Worst case scenario by a lean, but by how the way things are going to win here by around 5%. And let's start for the Democrats. Let's do Colorado. So Colorado, I just don't see it dropping from likely. I think Biden, even with if his approval rating drops even more, he would win here quite easily. And him versus Youngkin, I see Biden win the state by around 7 to 9%, maybe 10, if he's able to get the numbers up. But as of now, likely. And for the next state, so I had a lot of trouble with Iowa because I could easily see it being safe for Youngkin, but that would be assuming he does above average as governor of the state of Virginia, and I think that would just be too far ahead and jumping the gun, which is why I think I'm just gonna give Iowa as likely for Glenn Youngkin, since I see him winning here by around 10 to 12% in this scenario. And moving on, so let's go to Maine at large. So he could drop it to lean, but I think he doesn't have as good of an appeal in this state in Maine. I think Trump would have a better appeal, but he would still do better. Glenn Youngkin would do better, but Maine at large would still be likely. For New Mexico, so New Mexico, it would be really close. I would not be surprised if Glenn Youngkin, if the Hispanic appeal is in fact true of him, he could make a drop to around 4 to 6%. But here's the thing. I've heard so many mixed results of what happened in Virginia. Some people are saying he won the overall majority of Hispanic vote, which I'm not sure of. While others are saying, like CNN and other pollsters are saying that the Democrats won the majority of the Hispanic vote, and I think they probably did, since it would be even bigger news of Youngkin's win. And I see the Democrats winning New Mexico in this scenario by around 5 to 7%. As of now, so let's go to Ohio. So I think it is a neighboring state to Virginia and West Virginia, and I think Glenn Youngkin, like Trump, would win this state by a likely margin, anywhere from 7 to 9%. I think he might drop slightly. I think that Trump does have a better Rust Belt appeal than Youngkin, and I think if it was Biden versus Trump, Trump wins Ohio by around 10%. I think Youngkin in this scenario wins here by around 7.5 to 9.5. And lastly, for the 2nd District of Maine, Glenn Youngkin, just because he would get the Trump endorsement, wins here by a likely margin. I'm not sure how much he would win it by, but I guess it could be anywhere from as low as 5 to even 10 or 11%. And as you can see, after the likely states, Glenn Youngkin leads with 219 against Biden's 198. And let's go to the lean states. So let's start for North Carolina. So I think against Harris, Youngkin would win the state by a likely margin. But against Biden, he has incumbency. But I think Glenn Youngkin just misses out on North Carolina being a likely state, and I see him winning this state by around 4 to just below 5%. And for now, let's go to Arizona. So I think even though a lot of people are saying that it's trending to the left, in my opinion, I think Trump was just an awful candidate for the state of Arizona, especially because of the things he said about McCain, who was really popular and renowned and well known in this state. If we go back to 2008, you can see 8.5, 2012 9.1, 2016 with Trump 3.5, and then 2020 it flipped with Trump and went to Biden by 0.3%. And I think if you get Trump out of the equation and get someone with more appeal, the suburbs and other areas like Youngkin, and assuming he does good as the governor of Virginia, I think you would see Arizona come back to a lean margin, which would not be surprising. I think Glenn Youngkin would just be the right candidate for the state, and he wins here by around anywhere from 1 to 3%. And now let's go to Minnesota. So Minnesota, I think, would be a lean margin. He could, by he I mean Glenn Youngkin, could make it a tilt margin, and I would not be surprised by that. But I think that would be skipping too much, and I think Biden would win the state of Minnesota by around anywhere from 1 to 3%. I think Minneapolis has just too much of a strong hold over the state of Minnesota as of now. And for the next state, so for Wisconsin, I think Glenn Youngkin, it could be either a lean or a tilt margin. But by the way that things are going at the moment, the low approval rating by Biden, I think Glenn Youngkin would just barely win the state of Wisconsin by a lean margin. I think Glenn Youngkin, with the right endorsement and campaign and career as governor of his state of Virginia, he would win the state of Wisconsin by around 1.25%. On the other hand, though, I think Biden in Virginia would win the state of Virginia, even though it's Glenn Youngkin's home state, by a lean margin of anywhere from 1 to 3%. He could make a tilt margin, tilt margin, but I see the state of Virginia being a lean margin for the Democrats. I mean, bear in mind, from 2020, from assuming that's the result in 2024, that would be a wild swing of anywhere from 6 to even 9%, and I think that would be a really good win for the GOP if they're able to make Virginia back to a lean state for the Democrats. Still, a lot could happen. So for the next state, that's it for the lean state. So Glenn Youngkin leads with 256 against Biden's 221. And let's go to the tilt states. So let's start. And for Nevada, I think Glenn Youngkin wins the state of Nevada by a tilt margin. And I believe that Nevada is 99% sure gonna vote to the right of 2020. And he wins here by around 0.25%, or maybe even up to 0.75%. For the next state, so for New Hampshire, I think that even though Glenn Youngkin would be a really good fit for the state of New Hampshire, I think that it's just off for him to win in this state. I think Joe Biden wins the state of New Hampshire by around anywhere below 1%, I guess, 0.5%, I think. It would be another wild swing from 2020, because he won here by 7.4, and Glenn Youngkin would give Biden a run of his money in this state, but the Democrats still win in this state. Moving on to Georgia, so Georgia, even though it's trending to the left slowly but surely, I think Biden is not going to have the turnout that we saw in 2020 against someone like Glenn Youngkin, and I see Glenn Youngkin win the state of Georgia by around anywhere from 0.25% to 0.5%, or I think that would be pretty certain, I think. And for the next state, for Michigan, I think that Glenn Youngkin just doesn't have the enough appeal for the state of Michigan. I think that Michigan, you really need a lot of appeal in the suburbs, color workers, rural areas to flip the state, which Glenn Youngkin does have to some degree, but he does not have the Trump level that Trump has. And I think that Biden just barely wins the state of Michigan by 0.25%. As I was saying, I just barely see Biden winning the district of Nebraska, the 2nd district, by a tilt margin. I think that the GOP missed at gerrymandering, and it would still vote Democrat in 2024. And finally, for the state of Pennsylvania, I see Glenn Youngkin winning the state of Pennsylvania by around a margin of 0.25%. I think he does have the numbers in some of the counties in the suburban areas, and he just barely wins the state. And as you can see, Glenn Youngkin wins with 297 electoral votes against Biden's 241. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video.